The story follows a young woman working in a quiet corporate role who begins to notice subtle attention from Mr. Farhan, her 55-year-old boss. Known for his restraint and professionalism, Mr. Farhan invites her on an overnight business trip to another city. Though the trip appears strictly professional, unspoken tension lingers between them. At the hotel, glances and silences speak more than words. They share dinner, quiet conversation, and a sense of mutual loneliness. No explicit proposition is made, but the emotional undercurrent is undeniable. That night, she knocks on his door, and without speaking, they share an intimate moment. One, born not from passion but from emotional need and mutual understanding. The next morning, everything returns to normal. No words are exchanged about what happened. The relationship is never repeated. She ends things with her emotionally distant boyfriend, Samir, not because of Mr. Farhan, but because the encounter revealed deeper truths about herself, her needs, and what she'd been missing. The story closes with the narrator reflecting, not with guilt or longing, but with quiet clarity. The night in room 509 was not about love or betrayal, but about awareness, choice, and the kind of intimacy that changes you forever. I had worked at the firm for a little over a year when Mr. Farhan started noticing me, not in the loud, unsettling way some men do, but with a quiet attentiveness that made me feel oddly seen. He was the kind of man who made an impression without trying. Always early, always composed. His presence in the office was like expensive cologne, never overpowering, just lingering long enough to be remembered. At 55, he carried the weight of age like a suit tailored to fit only him. He spoke, little, but when he did, people listened, including me. I was 27, relatively new, tucked away in the marketing department with a desk near the window and a habit of keeping to myself. I'd never been the kind of woman to attract attention, and I preferred it that way. I did my work, stayed late when needed, and tried not to be noticed. But lately, I had been. Subtle things. A nod in the hallway. A well done after a presentation I hadn't expected him to attend. Once, he passed by my desk and said, "You're the quiet one who gets things done." I smiled for hours afterward. It started with a meeting invite. His assistant called. "Mr. Farhan wants you to accompany him to Lahore for a client presentation. Just an overnight trip." I paused. "Me?" "Yes." He said your report impressed the client. It was the first I'd heard of it, but I didn't question it. I told myself it was about work. It had to be. Still, when I hung up, my fingers lingered on the receiver. There was a flutter in my chest I didn't care to name. That evening, I mentioned it to Samir over dinner. He was scrolling through his phone while I spoke. "Lahore? With your boss?" he asked, not looking up. "Yes, just for a day. Presentation, back the next evening." He nodded, half listening. "Okay, cool." I waited for something more. Jealousy, curiosity, anything. But he just kept scrolling. Samir and I had been together for 3 years. Comfortable, predictable, dull in a way that felt safe until it started to feel like settling. We fought less now, but that was because there was less to say. Most days, we felt like roommates who kissed occasionally out of habit. The night before the trip, I packed light. One formal outfit, one casual, toothbrush, charger, perfume. I stared at the small bottle of scent for a long moment before dropping it into my bag. It wasn't for anyone. Or maybe it was. He picked me up early the next morning. Black sedan, clean inside, smelling faintly of aftershave and leather. He greeted me with a nod and a smile, formal but not cold. The first hour of the drive passed in silence. Then he asked, Do you enjoy working here? I turned to him. Yes, it's challenging, in a good way. He nodded, eyes on the road. You remind me of someone I used to know. She was quiet, too. Sharp, thoughtful. I didn't know what to say, so I smiled and looked out the window. The highway stretched ahead like a ribbon unraveling into possibility. By the time we reached the hotel, dusk had settled over the city. The front desk receptionist handed him 2 keycards. He passed one to me without comment. I read the number, 506. He had 509. Dinner was quiet. Room service, eaten on our respective beds. He knocked gently, asked if I'd eaten. I said yes. We stood in the doorway between our rooms for a few minutes, sipping tea, talking about the next day's agenda. His eyes lingered, but his words didn't betray anything more. I appreciate your work, he said. You carry yourself with restraint. That's rare. I didn't know what to make of that. I thanked him, and he stepped back into his room. No lingering stares, no awkward silence, just a polite goodnight. Still, something hung in the air, unspoken, unnamed. I shut my door and leaned against it, exhaling slowly. In the silence, my thoughts ran ahead of me. I wasn't naive. I knew what it could mean when a man like him takes a woman like me on a business trip. But nothing had happened. Not yet. Maybe nothing ever would. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was standing on a line I hadn't drawn, with no map for where it might lead. I lay on the unfamiliar bed, fully dressed, staring at the ceiling. The door to his room was just down the hall, not locked, not closed all the way. And sleep didn't come easy. The morning came without dreams, only fragments of half sleep and the dull ache of anticipation. I dressed carefully. Nothing suggestive, nothing plain. Just enough to look composed. We met in the lobby, both pretending the night hadn't stretched out like a question between our rooms. Mr. Farhan greeted me with a professional nod, his demeanor unreadable. The meeting itself was uneventful. Polite greetings, polished presentations, a few client smiles that didn't mean much. He let me lead part of the pitch, and I could feel his eyes on me, not watching for mistakes, but for something else. Maybe confirmation. On the drive back, to the hotel, we spoke more freely. You did well, he said. Better than I expected. I smiled. You sound surprised. I am. Most people shrink in unfamiliar rooms. You didn't. There was a pause. Long enough to wonder if he was talking about more than conference tables and boardroom slides. That evening, he suggested dinner at the hotel restaurant. It's better than room service, he added casually. I hesitated. All right. The table was near the window. City lights blinked in the distance, quiet and detached. He ordered for both of us, confident, not controlling. I watched the way he held his glass, the way his voice lowered when he spoke about his past. No mention of a wife, but a quiet admission. It gets lonely sometimes. Success can't fill everything. I listened, offering no advice, only presence. That seemed to be enough. I didn't expect this from you, he said, his gaze steady. What? This ease, like you've done this before. I haven't. He didn't ask what this was, and I didn't define it. The tension between us wasn't loud. It was a quiet current, just strong enough to feel. After dinner, we rode the elevator in silence. The soft chime as we reached our floor felt louder than it should have. He stepped out first, then turned, slightly. Do you have the revised draft for tomorrow's follow-up? In my room. I'll bring it. No need. Come in for a moment." His door closed behind me with a soft click. The room was identical to mine, yet it felt warmer. More lived in. A jacket draped over the chair, a half-read newspaper on the table. A single lamp lit the space in amber. He motioned toward the table. I placed the folder down. We didn't speak. He poured tea for both of us, hands steady. The silence was not uncomfortable, just dense, charged. He sat across from me. "I used to believe I was immune to distraction," he said. "And now?" He smiled faintly. "Now I know better." I didn't respond. My fingers curled around the warm cup, anchoring me. "I'm not trying to pressure you," he said. "This isn't about leverage or expectations." "I know. I just noticed you, and I stopped trying not to." My throat felt tight, like something was pressing against words I didn't know how to form. I wanted to speak, to explain the strange pull I felt, the mixture of admiration, curiosity, and a loneliness that mirrored his own. But I said nothing. Instead, I stood, slowly. His eyes followed my movement. He remained seated. "Thank you for the tea," I said, voice low. I turned toward the door. My hand brushed the knob, but I didn't twist it. Behind me, he said nothing. Not a plea. Not a protest. I stepped into the hallway. The door closed softly behind me. Back in my room, I sat on the edge of the bed, palms flat against the blanket. The tea still warmed my chest, but the ache was elsewhere. Had I expected something more obvious? A touch, a line, a gesture that made things simple? No. This was more dangerous, because it wasn't desperation. It was restraint, patience, an invitation left unspoken. There was still time to forget this, to call it professional courtesy, a shared meal, a thoughtful conversation. But I knew better. Whatever this was, it had begun before the hotel, before the meeting. In glances, in silences, in the way I wanted to be noticed by someone who noticed everything. I lay back, eyes fixed on the ceiling. My room felt colder now. Down the hall, just 3 doors away, was a question I hadn't answered. Not yet. I don't remember deciding to go. There was no dramatic pause, no whispered name against the doorframe. Just a quiet moment when the air in my room felt too thin and the silence too loud. Room 509 was down the hall. I walked barefoot, barely, breathing. The carpet softened each step, as if complicit. When I knocked, I half hoped he wouldn't answer. But he did. He didn't speak, just stepped aside to let me in. The room was dim, the lamp from earlier still casting its amber light. He wore the same shirt, sleeves rolled up, like he hadn't moved since I left. Neither of us asked why I was there. The question had already been answered in a language older than words. We stood a few feet apart. No urgency, no performance. When he touched my hand, it wasn't a claim. It was a question. I didn't pull away. We never turned on the overhead light. Whatever happened between us unfolded in shadow and stillness. No declarations, no moans to fill the silence. Only breathing, warm skin, and the sensation of something shifting, inside me, around me. It was not romance. It wasn't lust, exactly. It was surrender, a quiet unraveling. I stopped measuring what was right or wise. I just existed in the moment, finally and completely. When it was over, we lay in silence, not touching, just near enough to feel the weight of what we'd done. He said nothing, and I didn't want him to. Eventually, I got up and returned to my room. I didn't look back. The hallway felt longer this time. My key card shook slightly as I slid it into the slot. Inside, I sat, on the edge of the bed again. Same spot, different woman. Morning came like nothing had happened. The sun was indifferent, the breakfast buffet routine. He met me in the lobby with a simple nod. No secret signals, no change in tone. He asked if I slept well. I said yes. We checked out. On the drive home, he didn't touch me. Didn't flirt. He talked about the client's follow-up and upcoming deadlines. For a moment, I wondered if he regretted it. But he looked over once when traffic slowed and said, "You're more self-aware than most people twice your age." I said nothing. The comment was a gift, not a confession, and I didn't want more from him. When I got home, Samir called. I didn't answer. I stared at the screen until it went dark. I wanted to feel guilt or shame, but what I felt was something harder to define. Clarity, perhaps. Like stepping out of fog and realizing how long I'd been in it. That night, I ended things with Samir. He didn't ask for a reason. Maybe he'd seen it coming. Maybe he had felt the slow erosion too. Back at the office, everything looked the same. The humming printer, the click of keyboards, the casual rhythm of small talk. He passed me in the hallway a few days later. Our eyes met briefly. No pause, no smile. Just recognition. We never spoke of that night again. There was no repeat, no new invitations. Whatever passed between us had been temporary by design, complete in its singularity. But I was not the same. People say infidelity is a fracture, but sometimes it's a mirror. It shows you things you hadn't wanted to see, who you've become, what you've ignored, what you've quietly needed. That night didn't destroy anything. It revealed something that had long been missing. Presence, vulnerability, risk. I didn't fall in love with him, and I don't think he loved me either. But he saw me. For one night, one moment, I was not invisible. That was enough. Weeks passed. Then, months. Life resumed its steady rhythm. Promotions, emails, errands. But every now and then, in a quiet moment, sitting in traffic, brushing my teeth, watching rain slip down a window, I would think of room 509. Not with longing, not with regret, just remembrance. A choice I made, a door I walked through and closed behind me.